streaming will work because I figured out what went wrong. Oh no. Oh yes, it is. I think. Oh no. I can hear myself. Hold on. Okay, good. Thanks for coming. Who have we got in? Stefan's here. Excellent. So yeah, I didn't think. I hope everyone's all right. Cheers. I have my special tipple this evening. I didn't even think I was going to be able to make this one actually, but my thing has got postponed to next week, so I won't be able to make next week. So hopefully, Ben's Spacey Snaps will be able to take over. Today I wanted to just very briefly talk about the Widefield stuff. I think Stefan might want to talk about that, and also start getting to grips with Hubble's Variable Nebula. So Stalker Alex has been pretty busy at work and is pulling out of being the mod of Variable Nebula. So I am putting a shout out to see if someone wants to head that up. It is kind of potentially our biggest thing because, well, anyone who knows what it is quite... none of the scientists are doing it. So if we do it and we get a decent animation of like a 6-month animation of this thing, then we're going to be heroes. So it is something that I think is pretty... Well, I'm really keen we manage it. Yeah, so let's just kick off actually with Stefan. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about how the Widefield thing is going?
All right. Last week I've added a poll for you guys to vote for the target because someone suggested for another target, which is also really cool, and I wasn't really able to make my mind up for one. And I just suggested some last week, and I found it really awesome that some of you had interest in different targets, so we decided to vote. And we decided, we decided because you voted for it, so we decided for the Spaghetti Nebula for the second target.
Oh, awesome. So if I go to the targets, will it be there? Oh yeah, there we go. Excellent.
I still have to finish that post, it's not fully finished. I will have to add the BAT upload folders and stuff, but the basic idea for this target is that it is for people who have a dual narrowband or a narrowband filter. If you have no filter, you can still shoot it for the RGB stars because broadband data is still interesting to have with narrowband data because you can add like true color stars back into the image, which is fun.
Also, but I see there's looks like there's a little bit of dark nebula around and about as well.
That might actually be the case, yes. That could be interesting. If someone has a really dark place, they could definitely try shooting some luminance. Maybe there's some dark nebulas in there. I don't know for sure though.
Yeah, great target. And what sort of setup would capture an image a bit like that one? Is that a bit more zoomed in than what you're planning on doing?
Quite a wide field target actually. It's really big. So if you have around 200 millimeters focal length with a APC camera, you should fit it. Or if you have 300 millimeters focal length with a full frame, you should fit it. It's as big as how big is it?
That's enormous.
It's probably bigger than the Veil Nebula, or similar size.
Really? Gosh, that is a fantastic target.
But it's actually quite faint.
Well, perfect for us, isn't it?
It's definitely not something you're gonna capture with without a narrowband filter. I think the HA is so faint, you're definitely gonna want some sort of narrowband if it's like a dual narrowband or narrowband, because otherwise it's probably not worth the time. Unless you go for the dusts, if there's some, would be interesting to read into that maybe. Or like does.
I don't know if you can see my little pointer. There's a dark dust trail thing going on around here. I don't know, my cursor might be too small. And there's looks like there's general bits of dark nebula around the outside. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic target. We haven't actually, I mean, let's be honest, the Big Amateur Telescope isn't growing like it was, and for the simple reason that I haven't put a video out, and because I haven't done the whole social media thing where we share one of our images. I think it's definitely time to. I need to find time to process NGC2331, which is should be up here somewhere. Yeah, is it this one? Yeah, but I just haven't had a chance. But just rest assured, if you're thinking that this might, we're in a phase of building here. We're getting everything sorted out, and I think we've nearly done it. And when a big video goes out and we get a lot of people coming in, it's going to be very nice having all the foundations laid. And what you're doing, Stefan, with these wide field targets, I mean, potentially, I was just, the people I talk to, I say, oh, are you in the bat? They're like, no, I don't have the right kit for it. Potentially doing wide field targets like this could draw a lot of people in. I'm actually a little bit worried that it might swamp us. I think
that the people who could join now but haven't done it yet because they don't know about the wide fields, they might join with the next video, and it's going to be a lot more people.
Yeah.
Maybe one more thing about the wide field targets. I think I haven't really mentioned. I think I've wrote it in the comment, but I don't know how many people really realize it. But I think it's probably the best to just aim for the same kind of framing as the reference pictures I sent in, because I think those framings already look pretty good. We all need to agree on a framing, because if everyone has different framing, it's not gonna work. Because unlike the lucky imaging targets, these targets are huge, so we can all fit them in our frames, and they're all gonna have. Well, basically, we don't need to crop, and the resolution is probably also going to be slightly different. So,
it will be, but that's fine.
Challenging data set, but I think the most important thing is just that we all need the same framing, especially since we're all going to fit the frame. We're not going to crop them. So, yeah.
So, are you going to make a folder in the Google Drive and put it there? And in that folder, are you going to have a shot with the framing in? Is this the framing here?
I think these reference frame. I think I want to slightly change the framing for the first target. I want to get a little bit more of the left nebula in.
What, for the other target?
Yeah, the dark nebula target, yes, because there's like this beautiful left nebula which is kind of cut off slightly on this image. I think a little bit more of that, but I'm not 100% sure yet how to make people aware of the framing, how to showcase it best.
Well, it goes. I just tell you.
Yeah.
So I have on the other ones. I have a post which has this fancy pants thing on it, which moves, and then I have a really drab looking shot with the framing on as well here. And that same shot is in the upload folder, and the download folder, so people can access it and use it as a reference frame.
But we don't have any image. We don't have a sub yet from someone who shot the target, I believe.
Just grab one from NASA or something. Anyone, or ask Maria. She knows how to make synthetic reference frames.
Yeah. The synthetic frames are probably the best idea for now. I think the tricky part about it is that it's just so wide field that it's gonna be hard to get a good frame. Yeah. That is also like. But yeah, I'll look into it. Only fear I have with the synthetic frames is that it's hard for people to see where the target is supposed to be. They like to see the nebulas. Yes. And the other problem is with the dark nebulas, they're so faint that many of the framings, websites and so on, you cannot actually see the nebulas, which is also making it tricky for people to see where they have to frame it and so on. But I think one of the key aspects is probably providing coordinates for those of the people who can actually do go to, and the rest will just need to know roughly how the stars are located, I guess. I'm not sure.
I think you're right. Actually, the synthetic reference frame won't work because people will need to visually see what they're shooting more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah.
all problems that can be solved. So that's good. Thank you very much for this. And is there anything, before we move on, does anyone want to ask any questions about the wide field targets that we've got?
Actually, I have one more thing.
Oh yeah, sorry.
These targets are really only for Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Oh, I've specifically asked in the poll if someone from the Southern Hemisphere wants to shoot Widefield. I didn't check yet if anyone has answered that yet. Last time I checked, no one was interested. But if some people here are from Australia or from South Africa or South America, and you guys want to shoot wide field targets, and maybe there is actually a lot of people, we just don't know about it yet because the bet was all about deep field images so far. Maybe there's some people interested in it, and I'm definitely interested in adding a target, but as long as no one is interested in it, it's just not worth the time, because in the end, if only one person wants to shoot from the Southern Hemisphere, he can just do the project himself, because we need people, we need at least 2 people to do it, to be like a project.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you're right. We don't have that many Southern Hemisphericals. We have a few, and actually Elucin, Nick, who isn't here today, he has a list of where people roughly are living, but there's not that many in Australia, to be honest, or South Africa. All right, brilliant, Stefan. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. It's going to be fantastic. Really good target.
So I before you move on, I did have a question about this one.
Oh yeah.
There are some of us that have like narrower fields of view, and I know you had mentioned maybe it'd be interesting to do one of those kind of sequences where we start wide and then zoom into a narrow field.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want any kind of closer field of view, but if so, it'd be good to have like a reference for that, and then we could all target on that. But maybe that's just adding too much complexity. So I just thought I'd put it out there and see.
Yeah, it's something that we can definitely do. It's these 2 targets aren't that great for that kind of thing, because there's no like central focus. But I think it's definitely something we can do. And I think, Stefan, you mentioned about being worried about resolution and the different pixel scales and stuff. Honestly, you don't need to worry about it, because it's just what I do is, it's all something that happens with like After Effects. It's a program called After Effects, essentially. It just allows you can place both images on top of each other, kind of thing, the really zoomed in one and the wide field one. And you don't need to worry about pixel scale. It'll make a nice little sequence for Instagram and what have you, zooming in from wide field. Really nice. So I think it's definitely something we should try in the future. For sure.
I think actually this would be something interesting. If we have a target which is wide field and also could be lucky imaged, we could make one framing for the people who do lucky imaging, and then we do a separate target which is basically the wide field, which actually includes the lucky imaging. That could be actually included, and we could zoom into that. Yeah. But I think that's the only way we could do this.
Yeah. To be honest, it's no more work than choosing the target. We just share a target with 2. I mean, it'll be 2 different targets in the BAT targets channel. One of them will be much more zoomed in than the other one, and when we get all the data in, we'll be able to do that fancy zoom thing. Be quite fun, actually. Yeah, especially if we get really good data. People will be amazed how far we're able to zoom in. It's great. Great idea. Okay. Hatman, do you want to move on to... I think I might have popped a bit too much vodka in this, actually. The last mouthful I just had was quite a lot of vodka and not much ginger beer. Yeah.
No such thing.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'm always jealous when you're having your cocktail, because it's like lunch. I'm in the middle of my work day.
You see, if you were French, you definitely wouldn't be fazed by that. You'd have yourself at least a glass of wine.
I'm sure there's jokes that I should insert here, but I'm sure I only would offend somebody, so I'll leave.
Shall we talk about Variable Nebula? Hatman Jew, would you like to talk about Variable Nebula?
Sure. So, I've been looking through the Variable Nebula channel, and there are a bunch of questions that came up, and so I kind of put together a little bit of an agenda of some items to talk through. So, the first is scheduling. So, a lot of people have said, "Hey, how do we make sure we want to get twice weekly on this? How do we make sure that we get twice weekly?" My proposal is just really simply, when you get data, post it into the channel. Just say, "Hey, I got some data and uploaded it from today," and then when anyone's going to set up their sequence for the night, they can just look at the channel and see if no one's posted in the last few days, and if so, they can kind of add that to their capture sequence. So it's pretty straightforward. It does mean that people that want to participate will have to look at the channel periodically, but there's not a whole lot of traffic on the channel, so I think it should work out, but just kind of want to put that out there and see what people think.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is there's not a lot of traffic at the channel. The target isn't high for most people, so I've been in touch with. I was like, whoa, it's only Hatman Jew shooting it at the moment. So I got in touch with a couple of people, and they're like, you know what, it's just too low for me right now. Also, it will help if I put out another video, and at the end of the video, if I can tell 100,000 people that we need some more people to shoot it, that'll help. My thought on your suggestion, right, is like I'm pretty this is an American phrase, I hope I'm using it right. I'm pretty psyched about the Hubble's Variable Nebula. I think it could be tremendous, newsworthy actually, if we manage to pull it off. My worry about the let people shoot if they can shoot thing is that we could easily end up with a week going by without anyone shooting it, just because no one really knew. Is there any way of doing some kind of, like, you've been shooting it a lot, Hatman Jew, right? But what if, like, clouds are coming, right? You know what, guys, hurricane whatever is coming, the clouds are coming, next week is out for me. Shit, what are we going to do? I'd love for there to be some clever kind of, well, I have no idea really, but something somewhere between a Google calendar and a fire alarm, something like that, somewhere in the middle. Is there anyone who knows anything that might be fit for purpose? So what we're trying to do is have some kind of scheduler where people say, yeah, that we need to shoot this Variable Nebula twice a week. So if we've got, like, let's assume we get more people doing it, right? I think we have to assume that. If there's 3 people for next week, well, we know one of them's going to manage it. But when it goes down to, actually, there's no people who can manage next week, it's like, anyone got any clue as to anything that might work for that? Something fancy and clever and, to do with some bot that we had on Discord or something. There's not the shooting Hubble's Variable Nebula Discord bot. Is that what you're saying?
I think the fire alarm, because the problem with the calendar is most people, I think their calendar is the clouds. Like, their availability is more based on weather than than life, and so I think that, but I think you're onto something, like having a set of people that are regular contributors, but like maybe the regular contributors, they submit their email address, and then at the beginning of the week we give a call out and say, hey, who's imaging this week? Let's make sure we get 2. Yeah.
I guess you're right. Actually, it could be as simple as, because on Discord we can do people who are interested. But if anyone listening is interested in shooting the Variable Nebula, if you've got like maybe an 8-inch scope would do it, 10-inch scope certainly would. Please just say hello in the Variable Nebula chat, because we can give you a role, a Variable Nebula role, and whoever becomes the Variable Nebula mod will be able to @Variable Nebula, so that everyone gets a little ping, and that little shout out might be, hey, we really need someone to shoot this this week there's so and so has dropped out and someone else has got corona and someone else has got a wedding. You know, we're desperate, otherwise this amazing animation that we're putting together isn't going to happen. So maybe you're right, maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's a tight crew from around the world of Variable Nebula dudes. Maybe that's it. All right, yes. Next topic within Variable Nebula, Mr. Hatman G.
So then the next thing is, would like to find a volunteer to do some processing. So I've probably submitted 2 months of data, or a month and a half. I don't know. It would be good to do some preliminary processing just to make sure that we know what we have and whether there's kinks we have to work out. At the moment, you know, I think everyone's been submitting unstretched stacks, which is probably the right thing to do. But it would be nice if somebody, especially someone that is good at scripting and using some of the batch processing tools, would want to set something up so that we could be able to do kind of progress and just see where we are and see what we think of the data that we have so far.
Yes. My process, actually, I've got it. I've got one here. So that is what I did, and it wasn't very active. But processing, getting those ripples is quite tricky because I don't know anyone's actually has got those ripples before. Most people have got the can you see it? I don't even know if you can see it, but most people normally there's some shadows and clouds, right, that are much bigger movement. So these ripples is just the baby star at the core of this nebula is just, you know, getting brighter and darker, right? And that is a light ripple traveling out through the nebula at the speed of light. It's very faint. It's hard to get. Processing that does involve using PixInsight, I think, frankly. And, just below it, if I can show you just below it, there's what Hubble did. It's coming. Oh, it's not there. Sorry, it's an animation. It just takes a little while to get there. Anyway, sorry, I've just distracted myself even. So what was I talking about? So yeah, it's really hard. You need to use you need to be really good at getting everyone's image with the dark and the bright and the bit in the middle the same, right? So everyone's image needs to be stretched the same. There's a tool called linear fit, and then you need to batch. After you've got every image kind of stretched the same, you then need to batch process all the images, and it could be 50 different images, and there's tools for doing that on PixInsight, and it is a pain in the bum, and you need to be pretty good actually to do it. One thing I thought, actually, I looked at the data. We've got quite a lot of hydrogen alpha data. Now, I'm curious to know whether hydrogen alpha data will do anything, because presumably these little ripples that we're seeing here it's from the bright star, right? And it's like a reflection nebula, essentially. The light from the bright, when the star's bright, right? The light from that bright, the bright moment of the star is hitting the cloud and then bouncing off the cloud and then coming back to us. Hydrogen alpha, I'm thinking, is probably going to be constant. Like, it's probably going to be just a red glow, isn't it, if it's a hydrogen alpha target? So I'm not sure, although I suspect the science might be more complicated, because I remember when I spoke to Dr. Emma Chapman about this, she said that kind of V shape that we've got there is caused by that area of the nebula being sort of saturated with photons because the star's done an eruption. It's kind of, so there is gas all around this baby star. It just so happens that the star's done a like, what do you call it? Mass ejection, but like an absolutely mega big mass ejection, and it's saturated this area of the nebula with photons. And she was going on about something to do with that causing this bright sort of V shape that we can see. So it might not be as simple as what I think of as a reflection nebula. However, I can't see how these ripples would be anything other than a reflection nebula. A reflection nebula don't work in hydrogen alpha. So it's just something to think about. I wonder whether we need luminance or possibly, if you're shooting from the city, you can maybe cut out the higher frequencies like the blues and shoot greens and reds, or even just reds and infrareds. And that's equivalent to luminance, but it helps you avoid some of the light pollution. Maybe we need those kind of channels to get the ripples. I don't know. What does anyone think? Anybody? No. Okay.
I mean, if you know a physicist, maybe ask her. I think you. Do I remember you were talking to somebody that was knowledgeable about this? Because I've just been shooting high alpha because it's been low in the horizon. Hadn't even thought of. I guess I had just assumed that you would see it in all the spectra, but I didn't think it through or have any reason to believe that other than
Yeah. Well, to be honest, you wouldn't have gotten much with it being so low. You wouldn't have got much in anything other than the long wavelengths anyway. So it would not be easy to shoot in anything other than something deep, deep red wavelength, because it's just not very high, is it? But we can check it out with your hydrogen alpha data and see if there is anything going on there. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's, photons and the shadows actually particularly. It's a photon has to hit the cloud and then bounce off the cloud and come to Earth, right? And hydrogen alpha is just a glow. It's warm hydrogen, and it's not really warm. It's freezing for us, but it's warm enough to sort of glow at this frequency, and it should just do that steadily. I'm interested now, actually, whether what's really interesting and encouraging is your hydrogen alpha shots look pretty good. And I don't think it is particularly a hydrogen alpha cloud, which means that when it gets higher and you get luminance, then really you're in a very good place with whatever setup you've got, Hatmanju. What is it that you've got? What are you shooting with?
It's a 5-inch refractor.
Wow, that's amazing. So I was using like a 50 centimeter dish, but I only had an hour, right? So I'm guessing you're shooting... No, I only had half an hour every shot that I did. I guess when it gets high, you'll be able to shoot a couple of hours, won't you? Which will...
Yeah, I mean, as much as we need. I mean, I've right now been just tacking it on to the, I think I'm doing 45 minutes before dawn and just kind of switching to that just to get what I get. But I'm happy to contribute more if more is needed.
Awesome. Well, I think...
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, so the idea is to shoot this in hydrogen alpha, right? And the question is the hydrogen alpha emission or not?
The idea isn't to shoot it in hydrogen alpha. It's just that some people have been shooting in hydrogen alpha.
Okay. Do you happen to know how high this target is currently in, Germany essentially?
I don't. I know it's very low. I know that some chap in England isn't starting shooting it yet because it's too low for them. So I don't know exactly, but yeah, I mean the target is, I can never remember the name. Hubble's Variable Nebula. Maybe some clever person can look it up. I'll just find the NGC.
I think it's 2661.
It's near the Cone Nebula.
3 o'clock in the morning in Germany.
Sorry, what?
It's about 32 degrees at 3 o'clock in the morning in Germany.
Okay, do you know the culmination height?
The highest it will get, did you say?
Yes, sorry, two people at the same time and didn't understand.
The highest it will get is about 40 degrees, but that's not till just after 6 in the morning.
Oh, I think I have the diagram here. Let me quickly think.
You've got Nina, put it in as a target in Nina in framing, and it will show you the little graph of its rise and drop.
I have Instagram. So it rises at 12 local time and it reaches 6 in the morning. So to make this easy, I will try to take a spectrum and then we can just see whether there is a hydrogen alpha emission line or not.
Well, the
Awesome.
question isn't whether there's a hydrogen alpha emission line. The question is whether we'll see the variable kind of, light waves in hydrogen alpha.
I think it probably won't. It is the star which is changing in brightness, but how do you know if the HA is actually changing in brightness? Because stars have like all kinds of wavelengths, and the narrowband is just gonna use one wavelength. And what worries me, I think, is that the HA wavelength is not the one which is the change in brightness.
No, that might not be entirely correct, because if the photoionization state of the hydrogen changes, then we will see a changing hydrogen alpha emission.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I wasn't 100% sure was because what Dr. Emma Chapman had said, which was something that I didn't understand, which sounds a little bit like what Philip is saying now. So that's interesting. So maybe, maybe your work is good, Hamanju, with hydrogen alpha. We'll find out. One would imagine that luminance is the way what we should concentrate on, because we know for sure that works, particularly when there's shadows going across. People like Tom Palakis in Arizona shot really nice shadows sweeping across the nebula with luminance. So I think that is the priority, but it would be really interesting to see, and perhaps Philip will be able to tell us after he's looked at it, whether there's going to be a change in hydrogen alpha as well. Of course, if there is a change in hydrogen alpha, that's potentially fantastic for us.
A spectrum will not tell us whether it changes, but it will tell us whether there is hydrogen alpha emission line in the first place. If I take a spectrum and I see a flat continuum, then you can stop shooting H alpha immediately, because there's just nothing.
Yeah. And if you
I've been shooting H alpha and I have images, so doesn't that mean there's something there?
Not necessarily, because if you just cut out a 6 nanometer or so part of the continuum, you also see something. But it might not be what you think it is, right?
So, for instance, if you had a 6 nanometer, I think there's a filter actually that BARDA do, which is called green continuum filter. It's very narrowband, but it's not in any wavelength where gas is emitting. So I think it's called the green continuum filter. But if you pointed that at Orion, you'd still see Orion's nebula, because Orion's just so bright. If you pointed it at Pleiades, you'd still see the reflection nebula around that.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. But
Okay,
it would.
You know what? I will try to first search the literature, whether I can find something, right? And if I don't find anything, I can try to take a spectrum with our coarse resolution spectrograph, because for the good one, it is probably too faint.
Cool. Well, that would be awesome. Thanks, Weber.
Okay, I'll try. I can't promise anything, right? But I'll try.
Don't worry. But it's brilliant. It's so good having. It's actually, I'm just really, it's really good having such good folk here in the BAT who are knowledgeable and keen and doing stuff and shooting stuff. All right. So do we have any other topics to talk about? Variable nebula topics. There was something else, I think, wasn't there, Hamanji mentioned?
Yeah. So just to close on that last one, so I'll switch to L. I'll switch to luminance. We'll start shooting luminance, and that's the plan for now. And then maybe we'll switch back to hydrogen alpha or some mix down the road.
Awesome. Now I am actually hoping. I did actually email. There's a chap I got in touch with that I'm trying to persuade to come here. He's not very Discord, I don't think. And I've asked him to watch this video, so I hope he doesn't mind me saying he's not very Discord. He runs the Hubble's Variable Nebula Facebook page, and his name's John Lightfoot. He's an amateur. He doesn't necessarily shoot Hubble's Variable Nebula, but he's for the last 5 years he's been using telescopes like Liverpool. I forgot what it's called, Liverpool something telescope, to get data basically. And it would be awesome if we could get him on the group as a kind of like go-to knowledge person who's just got experience, not of actually shooting it himself, but he knows the nebula very well. Do you know what I mean? He knows when something big is about to happen, and he has contact. So we'll see if we can get him. So if you're watching, John, if you're watching, John, come on, come to Discord. So we'll try and get it. I've asked him to watch the YouTube thing. Anyway.
Okay. So two other quick topics. So one is focal length requirement for variable for BAT. I've been shooting at 925 with about a 1 arc second per pixel resolution. It's kind of probably on the border. Like, I would love to have, seeing the images that you got with the 50 centimeter, like, obviously are much better. This, I think this is good enough. It sounds like you looked at it and feel like that's good enough for focal length, because others were asking about 800 and 700, and I think they're okay. Yeah.
So I think probably 1 arc second per pixel is kind of the lower end, but I think it's fine. I mean, you got to remember that scope that I was using in Chile, which was 50 centimeters wide, it was still, the seeing wasn't actually that great a lot of the time in January in Chile. It wasn't. The seeing was worse than an arc second. And we still got what I got. So I think 1 arc second per pixel is fine. I think that by shooting longer than what I did, you'll capture nearly as many photons, maybe not quite as many, I don't know, as what I did in half an hour. Same ballpark anyway. So I think it'll work, which is really exciting. Yeah. But probably 1 arc second per pixel is kind of... On that scope that I had in Chile, I think I worked out that the light ripple would travel like 14 pixels every day on the camera that I was using, which was probably about half an arc second per pixel. It had big pixels, so yeah, you'd be 7 pixels per day for you, but we're shooting it twice a week, so a ripple, so not the shadows can move much faster. A ripple is going to be going, this is off the top of my head, twice a week, so 3 days is like 14-20 pixel movement of a light ripple, more potentially for a shadow. So yeah, I think it's okay, actually.
Okay, I'll post that to the channel. And then the last one is, so I've been doing 45-minute stacks. I'd be really interested if folks could kind of take a look at, the data and see if that's kind of okay, or if I need to shoot longer. I'm happy to shoot longer. I thought we were just looking for movement, so I'm not sure that, much higher resolution would have been, super beneficial, but they're not great, in terms of like a 10-hour stack or anything. So interested to see what people think of that.
So you're saying 45 minutes total integration time?
Yeah, per night.
Yeah.
So if I'm shooting it, like I said, I've been just tacking it onto the end of my sequences, because it happens to be the last thing that rises at night.
Yeah.
But if it's not good enough, then I can do longer.
So I would say actually yes, we will need, with the smaller scopes, we will need longer integration time. Actually, we'll need quite a lot of integration time. This might be why it's good to have, a number of people shooting it, because I imagine you've got other targets that you're going to want to shoot, and when it's higher up, it will really benefit from having more integration time, like 4 hours, because to get the difference, to get the light and the shadows, the more integration time you've got, the more contrasty, the more there is between, the less noisy the image is actually. But it means that you can pull out the changes in brightness within the nebula. So yeah, my gut would say we will actually need longer.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can't do it at the moment because it's too low.
Yeah, we're going to need an army of processors if we're going to stack multiple contributors per frame.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. So, but I'm sure also it'll start, like everything, it'll start off being a bit of a ramshackle event, but then we'll solve the problems, and eventually we'll get it sorted. Hopefully not too, it's a question of time. Hopefully it won't take too long to get sorted. But you're right, different scopes, it's just hard for the processing. But we do have tools like Linear Fit that will help us. I mean, when I shot it, actually, there were some nights where the seeing was just terrible, and I got 10 minutes of data, and it was still usable, you know, just about. A lot of noise reduction and stuff, but you could still see the movement, the change, even in just those ripples. So with hard work, it is useful. But you're right, we really do want some good processors to help us to come to the Variable Nebula channel and say, hey, I'm a good processor. I understand that this is potentially amazing and actually important, and something that the scientists will be wowed by with their professional scopes when we get to show them what we've done, and hopefully we can just attract some people to help with this processing. Because you're right, I mean, I'd love to have on my website like the developing image. You know, so at the beginning it will be a couple of frames, and then after 2 months it'll be like however many frames that would be. 2 months, what, 16 frames, right? And you know, 16 frames is kind of what I had actually, and then watch it grow and develop this thing out in space, this baby star and this crazy nebula, and we'll be the first people showing that, and probably the only people in the world doing this and showing this thing happening in space. And if we don't do it, there, you know, it's only the odd person like John Lightfoot who manages to get a bit of time on a big telescope every so often, who manages to do it. The professional scopes just don't. It's very hard to get a professional scope to look at the same target night after night after night. And also, variable nebula aren't fashionable, as Dr. Emma Chapman was saying. And I think one of the reasons for that is because, if you don't mind, this is an interesting story for me anyway, is that there's this guy who was who discovered Hubble's variable nebula, this nebula that was changing in like, I'm going to get my dates a bit wrong, but it was like 1920. He was in America, possibly Yerkes telescope. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, the guys he was an amateur, but they allowed him to use this scope. He discovered this variability, but the professional bods there didn't really like him. And they got this young guy who was doing a master's called Hubble to check his data. And Hubble checked his data and discovered that the nebula was variable. And lo and behold, he got it named after him. It's typical, the amateurs getting screwed over, right? But you'd think variable nebula, massive. God, this is important. You'd think everyone would be looking at variable nebula. But 5 years or 8 years or something after that, Hubble discovered galaxies, right? He discovered that our galaxy wasn't the only one. He discovered that there were these fuzzy things that were not just 1,000, well, not just like 500, actually, let me get my scales right. Not just 500 light years away, I'm guessing. There are these nebula that are hundreds of thousands of light years away, or 50,000 light years away, or 20,000. And that was just a monumental moment in our understanding of the universe. It was just so much bigger than we thought it was. And I suspect that's why variable nebula got kind of forgotten about, really. That's my theory. Anyway. So, yeah, we need some help with variable nebula. All right, yeah. I'm going to shut now.
That was all of the topics. So I'll kind of post the stuff that we came up with into the channel, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Anyone want to talk about anything else?
Not anything else. Just to say, I'll be imaging it when it's up higher. It's a bit late for me at the moment.
Yeah.
I can get it once it pops up around about 30 degrees, but that's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and it depends on the skies, and it depends on my work, because I've got to be up at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely.
But once it's there,
you might as well just get up early and get it, and then go to work.
Yeah, right.
But you don't need to worry about that, because it's never going to be clear anyway.
Probably not, no. But if it's clear and I can do it, then I'll be getting some,
awesome
4 or 5 hours a night if I can.
Yeah, awesome. And actually, I need to get back to them, but someone from iTelescope got in touch with me today, and okay, awesome. Anyone else want to mention anything?
Hello.
Hello, Analco.
Yes.
How you doing?
Fine, and you?
Sorry, I don't know how to say your. I know it's not your real name, but I don't. Anaklo. Anaklo.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Tell me what you
Um,
want to say. What do you want to tell us?
I have an idea. I don't know if it can be possible, but if we can just one great picture, sharp picture, and after we take some less sharp picture, we can see the intensity of light with less sharp picture and put it in the sharp picture for see. I don't know if I'm clear, but it's for see the difference in the great picture. We've added the intensity of light, you know?
Are you talking about like Instagram, Facebook kind of thing?
Not really.
Oh.
Uh,
So I'm assuming.
adding the luminance. Do you mean like adding the luminance as a sharpening, and then have like the animation run behind the luminance image to some sort of way to sharpen the image, but so that it's equal sharpness and the different light should be visible no matter if you add a luminance or not. Is that what you mean?
I think it's that, yes. It's for see. Hello. I will remake my sentence. You have a great picture, very sharp, and we have a lot of less sharp picture, but you take only the intensity of light of a less sharp picture and put in the very sharp picture and do an animation with it.
Is it? And is the purpose to show what a normal telescope would look like and what our BAT telescope is able to do? Is it like a difference between the two?
Yes, it's not a real way to take picture. It's like a Photoshop thing, but maybe it can help for the BAT in first time.
It can help what? Sorry. Maybe it can help.
Help in first for the BAT for see if, how we can get.
So it's a way of promoting the BAT. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it is an Instagram, Facebook thing. We have we could be like, this is a shot taken with an 8-inch scope. Oh, that's nice. Vroom. And this is a shot taken with 58-inch scopes. The BAT, come and join us. Something like that. I think, is that right? Just say yes, please. Otherwise, my brain's going to have trouble.
No, it isn't. Sorry, I think I will write.
Do you mean like? I think I have an idea what you might mean. So you mean like if you have a really sharp shot,
yeah,
and that's basically luminance.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of color shots, but we don't have color shots for this target. Or I don't know, but you say you want to use a sharp shot, and then you just do an LRGB combination to sharpen the images, but we don't have. I don't think we have color images for the.
Oh,
I don't know.
What
I don't
you
know if your
say-
idea works. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
Okay,
It might
what
be
you
time
want
to
to
move
say?
on. I hate to say, but trying to figure out what it is might maybe. I'm tempted to just. Well, you guys. Well, okay. I feel a bit bad now. No, carry on. Go on.
What you say is interesting. For I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sorry. When you take a picture of a planet, you can take a black and white picture and add color with an unsharp picture in color.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yes.
Yeah.
We can do the same thing with the intensity of light. You take the sharp picture and some unsharp picture, but the unsharp picture have different intensity because it's a variable nebula. And you add.
Yeah. That's what I was
yeah,
talking about. Sorry, I didn't think you were talking about variable. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think I did something similar to that. You can. What I actually did with my variable nebula was
Yes.
I
yes.
did the difference in light between one frame and the next. I actually think I then made that a mask. Anyway, so there's lots of very complicated things you can do to heighten the difference in intensity between the different frames. Is that kind of the ballpark you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. There are ways, and I tried a lot of things like that actually. And you can sharpen masks to really bring, and then there's a lot of shenanigans that can go on with that. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can write down just a rough idea of your steps in PixInsight so I've got a clue to start off with of how you make that animation, or is that too much?
Yeah.
Much.
Well, I can tell you the broad picture.
Go on then.
The broad picture is you manually. Well, first of all, you crop each frame. You get all the frames lined up, right?
Yeah.
So they're exactly on top of each other. You crop it down so that there's no like when you align things up, sometimes you're missing a corner or whatever.
Yeah.
You need to make sure the whole frame has got actual picture in it and not a sort of, you know what I mean, a cut off.
Yeah.
Then I kind of manually graded it to get everything in sort of the right ballpark, to get my blacks roughly right on each one, to get the bright roughly right, to get the center peak roughly right. I think I did that manually. Then I used a function called linear fit. So what linear fit is, you take your first frame, you say, I want every shot to have the same dark and bright and hopefully middle, I'm not exactly sure how linear fit works, as this first shot. And then you use this thing in PixInsight, which is you create a folder. You can create a folder which contains all the images in it, and you just have to apply linear fit and whatever you do. Basically, you then just, once you've linear fitted every image so that they're all the same intensity, then you just grade it nicely using those folders so that every bit of grading you do on one image affects all of them. I then actually think that I did sharpening on the images. Then I used the sharpened image. I might have used what's that one where it's a sharpening tool that looks at the difference between two areas. It's sort of broad.
Multi-scale linear transform, maybe.
It could be that.
HDMR, HD linear H. There.
Could be, yes. It's definitely.
It's HDR.
Is it HDR? What's the long way of saying HDR?
High dynamic range.
No, it wasn't that. It was
Local histogram equalization.
Local. I think I tried a number of things. One of the things I ended up with was local. That one. And what I found was, with my resolution that I had with my telescope, there was a particular setting in local histogram equalization that seemed to work quite well in making the change in the image to appear more, right? But it was a bit too strong, actually. So then I used that shot that had the local histogram equalization on it. I used that as a mask on my basic shots. I then graded using a mask to bring out the highlights and stuff. And the mask, which had this local histogram equalization applied to it, meant that my grade affected some areas of the image more strongly than the others. And it ended up making it look okay. So that's sort of a rough thing that I did. And the thing isn't playing now, but anyway.
And you animated it using.
So then there's a program called QuickTime which I use, where but there's quite a basically there's a thing that you can there's a number of, you can make a QuickTime movie out of a folder which has got lots of images in it, and as long as your images are numbered 1 to whatever, or A to Z, you know, in the right order, the program will fit them all together. QuickTime is one such program. After Effects is another. I suspect there are GIF makers on the web that will also work with a number of images. So yeah, that's what that's sort of a ballpark of what I ended up doing.
If you know how to use FFmpeg, you can do basically anything.
Yeah, I'm sure there's other ways. What was that? FFmpeg?
Yes, but it's a command line program and a very powerful one.
Yeah. Well, maybe some clever person. Yeah, I mean, if we can get people together to help figure this out in the Variable Nebula space, just pop in there and say, I'm interested in helping out in Variable Nebula, and we'll give you the role. I've nearly learned how to do reaction roles, which means at some point we'll have a very fancy system where you just click a button and you'll become a Variable Nebula person. But at the moment you have to ask.
I use Camtasia Studio, so I guess it's just a case of dragging each frame into the timeline, and away you go, right?
You could potentially drag each frame into the timeline. Yes, that's another way of doing it. Yeah.
So lots of ways it's possible. Once you have the frames that are equal to each other, that's the trick.
Yes, that's right. Getting them equal to each other is the trick. And it might be that, we have someone who gets the frame equal to each other. We have someone else who figures out a way of extracting as much kind of difference in the frame, if you like, using fancy things like local histogram equalization or HDR or I'm sure some of the other things you guys mentioned would work. Even just simple wavelets would help to an extent. I actually also, I remember now, my base image, right? Let me just switch to it again. My base image was all the frames stacked on top of each other. I made a nice image, right, of Hubble. And then I applied the mask that I was talking about, this mask, this ever-changing mask, to the really nice base image. Yeah. So that so it's kind of like the mask makes my really nice image brighter or darker in certain areas of the frame. Because when you've got because one of my frame was like 5 minutes worth of data or 10 minutes worth of data, that particular frame by itself just isn't good enough. But if I can extract at least the difference between that frame and the frames around it, which are better, then I have an idea of how the light is moving in that frame, and I can use noise reduction and stuff to make the frame kind of okay as a mask to overlay on a nice frame, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I guess this is kind of what that guy did with the Crab Nebula. I think he imaged it over 12 years, and you can see it changing. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So he did it sort of 3 times a year or something like that for 12 years, then stuck it all together and produced this animation of it actually growing in size and everything changing. It was incredible.
Yeah, but he would have had his images. He wouldn't have needed to dick around. I don't think he dicked around quite as much as we do. His images kind of, the nebula kind of the shell goes like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it is incredible, and it is kind of like it. I wonder, should I look up Tom Palakis, because he's not into this stuff anymore, but he did some really good, nice stuff of things that are moving in space a few years ago, and I think whoops. So that's his. You see, his is different. It he caught the nebula at an active moment, right? And he's got dark shadows moving across it. Whereas sod's law, when I shot it, it wasn't doing anything. just as I finished, these shadows were starting to creep across it, right? What the shadows are is right near the star. It's sending out streams of dark dust, gas, I don't know what it is. But the dark dust and gas that's coming out in streams, kind of like, a bit like, visually, a little bit like geysers, but I actually don't know exactly what it looks like. I'm just trying to put an image in your head. But those dark geysers create a shadow, and this here, moving across the nebula, is essentially the shadow produced by those darker streams of eruption, darker eruption stream geyser things. I don't know how to say it, but
Kind of like moving
yeah.
across the...
But I wonder if he did the Crab Nebula as well. He's got a dumbbell over 120 years, which I guess is using different people's images. No, that's not it. I have seen the Crab Nebula one. Where have I gone? Production base? No, didn't mean to go there. Sorry, I need to go back. I can't see it anyway. But I know the one you mean, the Crab. Oh, here we go. Crab Nebula over 27 years. So I think this is using other people's image data as well. So this one probably isn't the one you're talking about.
The one I was talking about is in colour.
Yeah.
I shared it in BAT meeting room.
Oh, did you? Well done. Okay, great. Let's go there. Okay. Ah, brilliant. Wow.
That's the one. That's it. How
Oh,
many
that's
years was
awesome. That's absolutely awesome, isn't it?
How many years was it?
So it's looking like about 10. Well, if we're still here in 10 years, we'll get something like that as well. We only need to shoot it a couple of times a year. We should do that, actually, shouldn't we?
Why not?
We should get the Crab Nebula twice. We should get the Crab Nebula twice every year. Yeah. Alrighty. Any more for any more? We've been going for an hour now, so it might be. Oh, Ricky Graham, I see you're here. Did you want to? I don't know if your mic's off at the moment, but thanks for coming. And if you wanted to get in touch with Stefan, he's here about helping out with the Widefield. That would be most appreciated. Oh, Ben, you're here. Ben, are you able to speak?
Yep.
Mate, I think I'm not going to be here next week. Are you able to? Do you think you'd be able to sort of, I don't know, chair the chat, as it were?
Yeah, it's the 19th, so should be fine. Yeah.
Awesome. So next week, it would be a nice relief for everyone. I won't be here. So if you've got any questions, then be sure to ask them. Ben will be hosting.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I'm guessing same time next week then.
I guess so, yeah. We'll try and keep it consistent. Alrighty, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, BAT Mods, for all your help. Thank you, BAT members, for all your help. We are looking for someone who's keen on helping to organise the Variable Nebula, so please get in touch with me if you are. Hatmanju, if anyone you know of is interested.
Point.
I know Hatmanju's a busy man, so he might not be able to do it. But we definitely need someone else to really who's keen. I mean, you got to be keen, right? And I think it could be important. Yeah, and yeah, thanks everyone. And I'll say goodbye. I always like to hear you say goodbye back, because otherwise it feels a bit like I'm just talking to myself. And everyone's...
Bye, Rory.
Oh,
Goodbye.
thank you.
Bye.
Oh,
Have a great week.
This is making me feel better.
Things.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks all. Take care.
Have a good week.
And you. I mean, you can hang out here if you want to chat more, but I'm off. I'm not watching. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'll shut up. All right. Bye.